Welcome back to Najin McMaster's Reactor Room podcast. My name is Willow.
And my name is Ajeen.
So for our fourth episode, we are joined by Kyle Ansilio. Kyle got his Bachelor's of Engineering Physics from Mac and his Professional Master's of Education from Queen's University.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Kyle's an educational developer and instructor for McMaster's new minor of Nuclear Studies and Society. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So what motivated you to develop McMaster's minor in Nuclear Studies? And was there a specific gap you wanted to address or a takeaway that you wanted to leave with your students?
Right. So the story of the nuclear minor actually happens before I was involved. So Dr. Marcus Piro, who he's appeared on the Reactor Room before, he's a great guy.
Yes, he has. I love that is the what he's known for.
Yes.
Former Reactor Room guest, Marcus Piro.
Yes. Yeah. Nothing else he's done.
Exactly.
So he raised the issue that what he was hearing from industry was that there was a need for interdisciplinary talent, that industry didn't necessarily need tons of nuclear engineers. What they needed were civil engineers that knew a little bit about nuclear. They needed mechanical engineers that knew a little bit about nuclear, et cetera, et cetera. And so my understanding of the events preceding my time is that Marcus approached our associate dean academic, Dr. Sarah Anderson, who's my direct supervisor, and brought this idea to her, whether it was her and or our dean, Dr. Heather Sheardown. They agreed that, yes, we should have a solution to meet this gap, and the form that it took was the idea of a minor degree. And so they were chugging along. They had formed a working group of the undergraduate chairs from each of the engineering departments, of materials, mechanical, et cetera, et cetera. And they were chugging along, and once they realized that there was something worth pursuing, they realized they actually needed to design a minor degree. And that's when I was brought into the fold. So my actual role within the faculty has nothing to do with nuclear. My role is an educational developer, which is a poorly defined occupational field, and every educational developer knows that. But what I would say is our main responsibility is to preserve or improve the quality of teaching and learning here at McMaster. And that involves, as one of the jobs, is program design. Minor degrees are an academic program. And so Sarah asked me to join the group and talk about what the process is like to design a minor degree. And it was so funny because she said, oh, you'll join us for 20, 30 minutes and then you'll be done. Like, okay, I'll show it. Here's how you design a minor degree. It's like, okay, thanks, Kyle, bye. And then I ended up sticking around for the rest of the meeting, and they slowly realized that I had the background of engineering physics, and that within engineering physics, I specialized in nuclear. I had done all the cool stuff. I went to Fukushima. I was well suited for this space. I knew how to design minor degree, and I had the background. And so they left it with me to start doing like an environmental scan of other institutions and their nuclear engineering programs. And so I was looking at like the 8, or I shouldn't say the 8, but 8 of the most renowned nuclear programs within North America. And as I'm doing this, I'm going through all of their program requirements. I'm pulling up course syllabi. I'm pulling out intended learning outcomes, course descriptions. I'm looking at everything to see what makes a nuclear engineering program.
Out of curiosity, how many of those are Canadian?
Just the one, just
Okay.
Ontario Tech. Right? Ontario Tech's the only Canadian institution at this time that we're recording to offer a nuclear engineering program. Mm-hmm. We have engineering physics with a nuclear stream, but that's not the same thing. Yeah. Right? So I'm looking at Texas A&M, I'm looking at Penn State, and a handful of others. And so just slowly started working this out and said, okay, here's what all these other institutions are doing. Here's what we already have, and then here are some of the gaps. And so we started brainstorming. Well, how do we fill those gaps? And those decisions took many iterations. I was actually, in preparation for this recording, I was actually looking back at some of the older drafts for the curriculum. And right now there's 1 NO3, 2 NO3, 4 NO3, 4 NN3. There were iterations where there was a 2 NN3, there was a 3 NO3. There were so many things. And so as time went on, we had all these things, all these ideas. And we're making really great progress. And eventually Sarah, our associate dean academic, whether it was a conversation she had had with the dean or whomever, maybe the other associate deans from the other faculties, she came back to us and said, we need to open this up to the rest of the campus. And she said, part of the process of getting a minor degree up and running is that you have to talk to the other faculties to make sure you're not stepping on toes. And my understanding is that through some of the conversations that were taking place, the one thing that was clear was that the STEM fields do not own nuclear. Everybody owns nuclear. Like, this was hammered home. So we said, okay. So we took everything we had and we sort of had to rejig it a little bit. We said, okay, we're going to be bringing in all the other faculties. Sarah's going to be doing a ton of legwork, going and talking to the other associate dean academics to see what their needs are in a nuclear minor. But then how do we structure the nuclear minor in a way that allows all these different people to come in and get something worthwhile? The cool thing with a minor degree is that you have a lot of flexibility within the bounds of it. But the bounds are finite. You only have 24 units to work with, which is, you can roughly equate that to eight courses, right? 8 3-unit courses. And so that's where a lot of those other course ideas started getting skimmed out. So like 2NN3 disappeared, 3NO3 disappeared. What we said was 1NO3 and 2NO3, those need to be a solid foundation that allow people to then explore whatever path makes the most sense to their degree, right? So what started out as a nuclear engineering minor became a stream of the minor that one could take. And if you're in engineering, that's the one you are probably most likely to take. But then when we talked to the Faculty of Science, right, I had a good idea of what courses the Faculty of Science could offer for the minor, because when I was in undergrad, I was trying to pursue the minor in radiation sciences, actually. So I had a whole list. We brought it to the associate dean. She was like, oh, this is great. Here's just a couple of revisions. Awesome. So that formed the nuclear medicine stream. And then meeting with the associate dean of social sciences, humanities, they're saying, okay, here are the courses that we think are most strongly related to nuclear. And then that formed that third stream, which is more of like the interdisciplinary stream. It doesn't really have a specific label. But once you do those first two, 1N, 2N, then you go through like this curated list of courses, and then it culminates in either 4NO3 or 4NN3. 4NO3 predates 4NN3. 4NO3, we always knew the minor had to end with an interdisciplinary project of some sort, because we wanted students to be able to go to industry during an interview or whatever and have some sort of artifact, like some sort of portfolio that says, like, I did this really cool minor, and here's my, like, the evidence of the things that I've learned along the way. For NN3 shook out in a later discussion. It was really interesting. We just had this idea, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring students to the nuclear facilities on site? You actually get to spend a day with the workers. And it was inspired, I think, partially by a former EngPhys graduate course. It was the one I mentioned before, where you actually go to Fukushima. The course we don't offer anymore, but it was, for NN3 was like, can we do that, but at the undergraduate level? Very ambitious project, and Marcus has worked really hard on it, because, as you can imagine, bringing students off-site to nuclear facilities, like, that can get pretty complicated. And so 4NN3 is shaping up to be a really, really cool experience, and then students will do one of these 2 final courses in their final year to wrap up the minor degree. So somewhere along the way, though, which is really funny, as we're doing all this work, we get the minor submitted. This all moved very, very quickly, by the way. This was just over a handful of months. We moved very, very quickly on it. But then, once it's submitted and it got approved, all this good stuff, you need a director to lead a minor degree. But the process to get a director in place takes a long time. At McMaster and other institutions, there are tremendous lead times to make sure there are checks and balances, right? Like, if I wanted to make a change to 1NO3 for the academic calendar, if I submitted it now, that change would not go into effect until fall 2027. Like, I couldn't even make a change for the next iteration. So we were directorless for I want to say like it was I think the first 6 or 7 months of 2025 when the first course 1N03 is going to run in fall of 2025. And so we have no director, but I was I was the person who had been the most involved with the whole process. And so I was left to sketch out what 1N and 2N needed to look like. 4N and 4NN, we could wait until the following year because we knew that they weren't going to run. But 1N and 2N needed to be mapped out. And so it was left to me, and I sketched everything out. We ended up getting a summer student. His name is Darius. He was fantastic. He helped us sketch out 1N and 2N, two courses that they really strongly relate to one another. You'll see a tremendous amount of overlap between the two. The first one's focused on applications, the second one's focused on society. But what you find is that it's hard to talk about the applications without talking about society, and then it's hard to talk about society without talking about the applications. So there's a lot of overlap between those two.
I'm currently into N03, and sometimes the professor will bring up a topic, and he goes, and he begins explaining it, and we're like, oh no, we already know. We know. We covered this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So it sets us up well.
Yeah, sorry, Jeremy. I tried to not steal too much of Jeremy's thunder in 1N03. But so 1N and 2N very strongly linked, and we set it up so that you could do 1N in the fall and then immediately do 2N in the winter. We wanted you to be able to do them back to back rather than needing to wait, a whole calendar rotation to follow up on it. And so for a long time I was steering the ship, and then our director was put in place. It ended up being Dr. Marcus Pirro, which has been so fantastic because I come through like the educational aspect of nuclear. I don't know a ton about nuclear. Marcus knows way more than I do. But I know enough about nuclear, and I have enough of a multidisciplinary lens to see it as an educational opportunity for us to explore these topics in academic ways. And then you have Marcus, who is just so well tapped into industry and sort of the global landscape of nuclear that we just work so well together. There'll be times, or there were times last term where I'd message him, I'd say, we're going to be talking about this topic because I know it's important. I'm not sure how to make it land in a way that's engaging. And so he'll call me and we'll talk, and he'll give me some ideas. I'm like, okay, that's good. I think I know how to do that. Actually, like one of my favorite lectures from the course last term, I was so stuck on. I had no idea what to do. I was like, Marcus, I know this is important. I can't crack the code. I can't, figure out how I'm supposed to convey this. And so we went for lunch. It was a working lunch, and we just hashed out some ideas. And then I came away from it. I was like, oh, okay, I think I've got a good grip on this. And it turned out to be one of my favorite lectures delivered. It was so good. Maybe because I was going in expecting I was going to do so badly with it, but ended up being, I think, one of the best lectures. So,
which lecture was that?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
So, this was the third. Well, not even the third, because it was all one night, but it was the licensing one.
Okay.
It was the licensing.
I do remember that.
Yeah, licensing, very important. Yeah. Not very interesting. The language Marcus and I kept joking back. We said it's a broccoli topic. It's incredibly important. It's not exciting. Mm-hmm. It's not exciting. So then when we were discussing it, he said, well, here's something that happened. It was the whole NRU situation.
Yes.
He said, if you can build toward that and then pose it as a point of discussion, I think that's how you...
And a good assignment question.
It was
the
a good assignment
that followed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers for anyone who takes the course. But, I think if you remember, it was like we talked about NRU. We talked about this very controversial thing that happened. And then I put the poll up, said, where do you land on the issue? And it landed almost exactly 50-50. Mm-hmm. And I remember that moment, there being this gasp in the room, because I think people either just didn't expect it to be so close, and or people assumed that they were answering the correct answer. They had it locked, mm-hmm. and then were shocked to find how many people disagreed with them. I did a lot of steering of the ship for a while. Marcus has taken the reins as the director. We work together so well. He's doing a lot of legwork to reach out to the other faculties to really expand the minor, to say we're doing all this stuff, going to business and saying, how do we make this more interesting for business students? And now, nothing confirmed or official, right? But now we're talking with the folks over at DeGroote, and they're saying, well, maybe we want our own stream of this minor, which is fantastic. Like,
That's
please,
interesting.
we would
Yeah.
love to do
Yeah,
that.
that'd be nice.
Right? So
Nuclear business. That's
nuclear and
great.
business.
Yeah.
Nuclear and business. So yeah, that's a little bit of the story about how the minor came to be, and my involvement with it. I think it's going really well. We were told, I don't know if this is official, but we were told that we were the highest enrolled minor degree in at least the history of the McMaster engineering faculty.
Damn, that's impressive.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a lot of hard work from a lot of great people. So yeah, and hopefully bigger and better things to come.
Of course. So then a little bit of a follow-up to that, but specifically the and society part of the minor. How did you work to achieve a good balance between the technical curriculum and the society curriculum that was emerging as you realized maybe we shouldn't limit this to nuclear engineering and maybe we should broaden it? How did you find that you'd struck a good balance?
Yeah, well, what we did was we pulled all the technical stuff out of the required courses. 1N03 and 2N03, if you're in engineering, like those are complementary courses. So is 4N03. We pulled all the technical content out of it. Granted, for 1N03, the first 4 lectures are very science heavy because they kind of have to be. Like, before we can talk about anything else, like, I need you to understand what nuclear actually means.
Right.
But other than that, like, I'm hard pressed to say that the rest of that course is technical at all. And I don't know too much about Jeremy's execution of the course, but I imagine his is not particularly technical.
No, very society focused, but it's like the NRU lecture where we look at ethical problems, we look at how nuclear is seen on the world scale, and I mean, he worked at the IAEA, so he's the expert on that. And so yeah, it's very much taking the foundational knowledge and then just applying it to bigger questions,
Different contexts. Yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, we pulled all the technical content out in a way that a humanities student can go through 1N and 2N and be fine. A social science student, a business student, anybody can go through 1N and 2N and be fine. But then you have your curated lists where if you're going for something more technical, you're going to do your engineering or your science courses. If you want to do the non-technical stuff, you can go through your courses offered by the Faculty of Humanities or the Faculty of Soc-Sci, hopefully soon the Faculty of Business. So that's how we tried to strike that balance. The key is going to be, sticking the landing on 4N03, because 4N03 is meant to be an interdisciplinary project, which means a technical student and a non-technical student have to be able to do it. So, you know, there's quite a few eggs in that basket, making sure that course does stick that landing in a way that all students can be engaged with it. But I think we have some really good ideas for how to do that.
Excellent. Look forward to that. It's going to be good.
This is also a follow-up to, like, how you talked about how, like, when you first started off, like, you know, trying to figure out the curriculum for McMaster's, you know, minor, you looked at other, you know, institutions and what they're doing. Is there something unique about McMaster's curriculum from, like, other ones that you looked at, or, like, something you guys are trying to integrate that's, like, novel from everything else?
Sure. So when I was doing the environmental scan, I came up with a list of 12 topics, the most prominent 12 topics across the board. And what we found is that the first 6 were pretty much consistent across the board. You have to talk about reactor physics. You have to talk about fluid dynamics. You have to talk about heat transfer, right? Like, there's no nuclear program, presumably in the world, that you can run without these topics. But then it starts to get a little bit more varied. So, for example, not every nuclear program requires statistics. Not every nuclear program requires engineering economics, which is an interesting perspective. Like, some will have some, and then others will have different ones. Nowhere in the top 12 topics is there an element of a societal focus. Nowhere. It doesn't exist. And so we think that this offers a unique way to complement something like a mechanical degree or a civil engineering degree or an eng-phys degree, anything like that, right? It's you have this explicit societal piece to tag onto it. It's like, yeah, I know the technical stuff. I have a solid foundation of that. but I also know what it looks like once you get outside the technical bubble. Like, I know how society reacts to these things. I know the history behind nuclear and why the conversations we have now about nuclear are the way that they are, why people talk about it the way that they do. So I think we're doing something quite novel. Although 2 months, I think it was 2 or 3 months after the minor got approved, Marcus sent me a link to a minor degree coming out of the States that was very similar.
Oh.
And we were like, oh man, I really thought that we'd be able to enjoy being the only ones for a little bit. So I think they may be up and running now, but I think they're going to be up and running the next academic year.
Okay.
I think they had just announced it at the time.
We set the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
We set the stage, yeah.
We're the pioneers,
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
More on that, were there any topics that you felt were especially important to include in the minor or in the lectures, for instance?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I thought they were all important. So it's kind of like choosing your favorite child. But I think, for me personally, one that was really, really, really important was the lecture on nuclear narratives.
Yes.
That one comes in, that's week 3, lecture 1. That we do our 4 lectures on the science behind nuclear. We do 1 lecture on the history of nuclear, and then we immediately jump to a lecture all about how people talk about nuclear. And during that lecture, we talked about I think it was an op-ed, I don't know. Yeah, it was an op-ed post, on a website that gets millions of views every day, where they were just thrashing nuclear science. So much so that the American Nuclear Society stepped in and said, hey, like, this is not cool.
Let's fact check this.
Yeah, let's fact check this. And that's what that lecture became. It was so funny because I was looking up, I was like, let me find an example of an article piece to debunk. And then I found this one. And I was looking at it, and it was just so egregious. I was like, I'm going to spend the whole lecture talking about this one, just this one. But it was the goal of that lecture was to show it's like you're only 5 lectures into the course at this point, and you already know enough to know that this article is a bunch of junk, right? And we go point by point by point. Like, some of it, like, they're citing real things, like these are things that actually happen. These things are true. This one, a little bit disingenuous. This one, a little bit disingenuous. But like, you have the disingenuous framing amidst kernels of things that are actually true. And that's how narratives form. It's like, yeah, there are aspects of this that are true, but they're just not being put together in a way that tells the story accurately. And Willow, you may remember the moment from the lecture when the author makes a super strong claim, like super duper, and it's hyperlinked, and you think, oh, like, they're going to have a really good source for this. And then you click the hyperlink, and it brings you to a website where the author wants you to buy her book for $80.
What was the claim?
I don't even remember what it was what it is at this time, but it was like really strong.
Okay.
It was really strong.
And
it's
if,
like,
yeah, I think if we looked into some of the sources that this author was citing, and it was just some terrible echo chamber. Like,
Yes.
the further you looked into the people that this woman was citing, they were all just as, or not misinformed, because she was educated
informed.
and yeah, but just weaving together all the wrong information to paint a picture that ultimately wasn't true.
And like, I'll give you an example, right? Like, if I gave you the statistic that 1 out of every 5 accidents are caused by a drunk driver, and you came back and said, well, 4 of them are caused by sober drivers, that must mean that drunk driving is statistically safer. You'd be like, no, that's absurd, right? But that's what was happening here. Yeah. It's like you take the statistic, which is true, and you derive the wrong meaning from it.
The wrong narrative,
right?
Yeah.
And so nuclear narratives was a really important one for me. The one I think I had the most fun with, I don't think other people had fun with it, but the one I thought was fun to include was actually the one on religion.
Yes.
Because I think people are like, why the hell is this guy talking about religion?
Religion and nuclear, yeah. I wouldn't
Wait,
expect that.
it's good.
Yeah, well, right, like, there's the Oppenheimer quote, right, when he talks about the Bhagavad Gita, right? So, strong religious parallel. And then the deeper you dig into it, it's like, oh yeah, there's like parallels between the advents of nuclear science and other religious stories, like the Tower of Babel, or even Noah's Ark to a certain extent.
And Pandora's box.
From Greek mythology, right? And it's easy to just say, oh, that's a coincidence. Or you can take a harder look at it and say, no, there's something here. That stories written 2,000 years ago maps so cleanly to what we are seeing. Why do you think that is? It's a question asked in earnest, and I don't. You're thinking about it. I don't need you to have an answer for me.
I know.
But the question in the assignment was, what do you think this means for the relationship between nuclear science and humanity? That you can map these stories directly to what we're seeing now. Right? It's an interesting thought experiment, and if you're going to come to university, you should be prepared to engage in interesting thought experiments. Wow. There's no right or wrong answer there, but I'm going to grade you based on your ability to articulate something. Exactly. So I think it's fun. Others may disagree with me, especially if you're not particularly religiously inclined, which is fine. But
there are mythological stories as well that can be applied to it.
Of course. Like Pandora's box is not religious, right?
Yeah, I think in my assignment I talked about how fusion, the fusion that we're trying to replicate on Earth is what's happening in our sun and our stars. And that tons of, there are so many sun gods and sun mythology.
Yeah, Ra and
so
Egyptian.
Imagine the Mayans or the Aztecs who made sun sacrifices. Imagine what they would think of us trying to replicate the power of the sun on Earth. Is ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous to them.
Blow their minds.
Yeah. So this is, I don't know how, this doesn't obviously serve like nuclear industry needs or anything like that, but it's like you're in an academic environment. You're in a place where you're supposed to be exercising critical thinking and just having fun with some of these ideas. And it's like, this was a perfect way to do that. It's like, look at this relationship and tell me what you think it means.
Yeah, so, I would have never made that connection.
That's really creative.
As a hardcore all I was doing in fall semester was these hardcore technical electives, Eng-Phys classes, and then I would come to your course, and it was a good break and looking at nuclear in ways that I would not have otherwise.
Good, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So it's like you're using a different part of your brain now.
Sure,
So it's like more,
sure.
the creative side. So it's kind of fun. Yeah.
Moving maybe now more to a big picture and the outcomes of the students who take this minor. Why is it important for nuclear education to extend beyond engineers and physicists?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you are looking to build a reactor, you can get some nuclear engineers and you'll be fine. If you're looking to develop nuclear or radioisotopes for nuclear medicine, you can get some medical physics people in a room and they'll be fine. The key is everything around that, right? Like you're never going to just build a reactor. You need a tremendous amount of funding to fund a project that's going to take 10 years or more, right? So you're going to need business students for that because their whole thing is project management and handling money. You're going to need to talk to the people that live near where the reactor is being built, right? So we're going to need lots of social scientists. If you're in a country where having something related to nuclear is contentious to neighboring countries, you're going to need diplomats. If you want people to better understand what nuclear actually is, well, you're going to need people that can tell stories or can report through journalism or whatever appropriately. So you're going to need humanities students, right? So you're going to need all these other people if you're going to build a nuclear reactor. The actual building of the reactor is quite straightforward, but you need all these other dominoes to fall in place in order to get to that point. So nuclear, and goes back to what we were hearing from the other faculties, was the STEM fields do not own nuclear. Everybody owns nuclear. There's something in there for everybody. I mean, we were just talking about the ties between religion and nuclear, right? Like an engineer is never going to think about that. Well, maybe they do because we did, but
only when prompted.
Only when prompted. Exactly. So, yeah, there are many roles outside of the technical aspects that need to be filled in order to get nuclear facilities up and running. And so that's why we think that this minor degree, is really important for folks in the humanities, for folks in social sciences, business, everything, as well as the health sciences, engineering, obviously. Like, we're going to need them too. But you need so much interdisciplinary support, right? Even going back to my favorite lecture on licensing, like we talked about how you need to collect biological data around proposed sites. You need to collect hydrological data, hydrogeological data, seismological data. You need all this other data, right? And yeah, you can just hire people to go and do it who are ambivalent, or you can train fleets of people that know nuclear and what's going to be happening, so that when they're going out and doing this stuff, they have that context in mind, and they may catch things that other people may not otherwise catch.
That's a good point. Do you think that we're currently educating students in a way that aligns with real needs of today's nuclear industry?
So when you say we, do you mean McMaster? Do you mean the nuclear minor? Do you
So,
mean society as a whole?
I think I would direct it more as McMaster and the minor of nuclear studies, for example. Mm-hmm. But given that you've surveyed other curricula, are they doing stuff or not? Are we leading in that respect?
Yeah. So important distinction to make is that this is a nuclear studies and society minor. It's not a nuclear engineering major, right? And so, yeah, there's things that they're doing that we're not explicitly doing with the minor, although there are pathways that allow for students to do similar topics, depending on what stream you're in. But I guess the broader question is the minor directly mapped to industry needs? I don't think it is. I know it is, because we brought in very early an industrial advisory committee. We've got folks from Kinetrix, we've got Bruce, we got OPG, CNL, CNSC, NWMO, who we've run all of this by them. We made sure that we are directly addressing the things that they need, that they're seeing. And it's one thing for us to say, hey, we're doing this thing and we want your sign off or your approval or whatever. And they'd say, yeah, like whatever, it looks great. But it's another thing for these people to put their time and their money behind their support of what we're doing. So for 1N03, we had a vice president from OPG come in to do a guest lecture. I've already got the next guest lecture for November 2026 lined up. Wow. Right, from NWMO, and she's fantastic. Like, she's really excited to be there. Mm-hmm. The 4NN3 course, which is going to be very expensive to run, we're trying to run this at no cost to students, because you're already going to be paying tuition, right, which is considerable. Mm-hmm. But when thinking about transportation, lodging, all that stuff, we've got at least a couple of companies that have vocally said that they want to fund the course. And we have one that's like, we're putting pen to paper now that they're going to support the first iteration of the course, right? Really good. So it's more than just them saying, oh yeah, like, looks great. It's them saying, no, we want to be part of this, and we're going to help fund this next round of graduates.
That's great. Perfect. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah. Well, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening.
Yeah, a lot. There's a lot happening.
Perfect. Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, no worries. Like, if you could give, like, someone, like, a piece of advice, like, a student in, like, STEM or not STEM, like, who are curious about nuclear, like, how would you, like, explain it? How would you go with, like, explaining what would it be? Like, one piece of advice,
A piece of advice for any student that's looking to do the minor or just get involved with
exactly,
nuclear. Yeah. So, at the end of last semester, I had a student from 1N03 come up to me, and he was just very grateful for the opportunity to be in the course. And he told me that his dad works as a nuclear engineer, mm-hmm. and that he came into this course thinking, I already know everything we're going to talk about because I've heard it before and I'm learning it through my courses. And he thanked me because he said that he realized how much he didn't know about just the wider nuclear landscape. Again, like, if you want to build a reactor, fine, that's cool. Technical skills, you know that. But there's so much else around it. There's a whole history behind it that, there's just so much there to unpack. And so I think for anybody who's looking to get into nuclear, I think I would encourage them to really, well, first of all, I'd encourage them to take nuclear studies 1N03, obviously, and then take Jeremy's follow-up for 2N03. But really, it's just to get educated on this stuff. Right, is to really learn about the nuances of it. I'll tell you another story. So halfway through 1N03 in the fall term, mm-hmm. I had an Engine Society student reach out to me who was interested in nuclear and wanted to focus her fourth year inquiry on nuclear. She wasn't in the course, but she had found out through the grapevine that I was the one running it, and so she reached out to me and we talked about it. And I said, okay, like I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to supervise. And she gave me her first like proposal for the report. And in it, she said something to the effect of, I want people to, I'm trying to remember exactly, but it was along the lines of, I want to do something that helps people feel less scared about nuclear, or see why there's nothing to be afraid of. It was nothing to be afraid of about nuclear energy. And I had a Teams call with her, and I said, look, if you dig into the history of nuclear, like there is plenty to be scared of. There's plenty, like, you know, go and talk to someone who descended from the
a survivor of the atomic bombs.
Yes, a survivor of the atomic bombs, right? And tell them that there's nothing to worry about, right? In some ways, like the Nuclear Narratives lecture, we talk about how the truth is almost weaponized. But truth is a two-way street. We have to be honest about what is safe, but also like where we've come from, how we've gotten to this point in time. And there are plenty of reasons to be scared about nuclear. But the antidote is not telling them it's fine. The antidote is education. Learning more about the stuff, how we got to this point, so that we can have informed discussions about it. And so I think that's the advice I would give, is that nuclear is so much more than just a reactor in a building on a site. There's a whole history behind it. There are really big social dynamics around it. There are very interesting educational questions around it that people could have, but it's so much bigger than I think most people actually think of when they think about the word nuclear. They probably just think of a bomb or a reactor and like that's it. It's like, no, there's so much more to it.
Well, that's a great answer. I love it. We'll do one more closing question and a bit of a think ahead, or maybe a bit of a challenging question even. How do you think programs like our minor of nuclear studies and society at McMaster, how they help prepare students for roles that don't yet exist in the nuclear field?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a good segue from the last question, where we're saying it's so much more than you think it is. So I think by doing the course and being exposed to different ways to thinking about it, exploring the historical context, the societal impacts, you know, how we basically play God in mutating organisms to fit our whims, right? Mm-hmm. In being able to have those conversations and think about it so broadly, that opens our minds open, like, to the possibility of jobs that may not exist now but will exist in the future. Right,
so we make the jobs. It goes the other way.
Yeah,
the students of the minor make the new jobs. We're not preparing them for the new jobs. Yeah, they are the new jobs.
It very well could be.
Okay,
you'd be surprised how many jobs exist in industry where they were created for the person rather than, you know, the job was created and now they need to find somebody. And so, the ability to think differently about something, to navigate a question from multiple perspectives, that should equip people for future positions in fields that they don't know about, right? And they wouldn't even know to think about because they don't exist yet, right? But when they do come up, hopefully after going through this minor, you've trained yourself to think more broadly, more interdisciplinary, such that you're equipped for such positions. That's for positions that don't exist yet. I think that's the best way I can position the answer.
For sure.
Thank you. And this is kind of a tangent from all of this. I have a question more tailored to Willow. This is, I know you wouldn't expect this, but like as a student that was, you know, in the classes that it's already currently taking the minor, like what's your perspective in being in these, you know, the course itself to start off? How did you experience, like how was the experience? Just so like someone that's like going in as a student, like they get to know the student's perspective.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and you don't have to lie to me.
Yeah, you don't
it's
have
okay.
to.
I think it's great
honest,
to
you know?
contextualize all of the heavy science that you might be doing if you're in either medical radiation sciences like you, Ajeen, or engineering physics or some sort of engineering adjacent program. And then it gives me a history of the field that I want to go into. And a lot of it is just so, there's a lot of anecdotes I find in these courses that and when you have experts like yourself, Dr. Whitlock, Dr. Piro, building the curriculum, they just impart a lot of their wisdom too into the courses, and you learn from people who have studied this and worked in those industries. And so, yeah, it's very good, I feel, for my professional development, for my education, and teaching me how to think differently about something that I believed was really just math and physics.
Just sort of what it is. At first glance.
And it's more than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm flattered that you included me in the experts with Dr. Piro and Dr. Whitlock. Those guys are titans.
They have serious experience.
Yeah. I don't have the level of insight that they have.
But you have an educational background.
I have the educational background and the perspective, right? Like, I can look at a topic like nuclear and ask the question, like, what's the value when you compare it to religious questions, right? I don't know how many people in industry think or even care about a question like that. I care very deeply about a question like that because I care about the educational value of the experience. So, those guys are fantastic. They have so much industrial experience. I'm just a guy who likes to think of interesting questions.
I have a question for that question.
Okay, great.
So when you do ask these educational questions, do you what do you think as a student might that could entail from these questions? Like, have you seen anything crazy come out of it, or maybe a spark? Because these questions for sure have a lot of philosophy to it. Because certain innovation. So have you seen any of the spark?
Yeah, it's really interesting because by design, and I know this wasn't popular in the course, and I'm working to fix it. But by design, I didn't ask for a lot of detail in my questions. It was sort of here's the prompt, and it was, I'm going to mark you, and I'm going to tell you if you've written enough. And sometimes the answers are fairly concise. It's 4 to 5 sentences, start to finish. There's nothing spectacular or remarkable about it, but it's a solid response that articulates a little bit of thinking. But then you'll have the people who write pages. So one of the questions was talk about an important historical important historical event, right?
Yeah.
And usually people talk about Chernobyl or...
I'm a Chernobyl nerd, and I had to rein it in for that. It's just don't.
Okay.
Stop.
Yeah, but you get the pages of people like that. I had one person of an Asian background who talked about Fukushima and talked about what a disaster, not even a natural disaster, but how the human factor disaster of that course or of that accident. And so that's how I try to open the door to allow for people who really want to explore these things. Now, that being said, and maybe Willow can speak to this too, the biggest piece of feedback I got from the course was they want more structure in what is expected out of an answer. So they don't like this whole I don't know how long you want it to be and all this stuff. I am working to bridge the gap a little bit because I have what I believe to be strong pedagogical reasons to structure it the way I do, but I also know that students are not necessarily having the best time with that type of question. So I'm trying to bridge the gap a little bit. I don't think I'll ever fully go to their side because I think that I'm coming from a strong place, but I am trying to bridge that a little bit. And there's going to be more focus on being able to think about topics more critically rather than just saying, hey, what are these 3 things we talked about from lecture? Somebody could just go, 1, 2, 3, right? No, it's going to be, tell me about these 3 things and analyze the relationship between them in this way.
Okay.
Something like that. Again, to try and think deeper, more critically about the material. So that's a long-winded way of getting to your question. But your question, I guess the answer is some students, they answer very concisely. Some students, I think, see the opportunity to really explore a topic, and I can see it come through in their writing. That as they're thinking about it, as they're answering the question, they're pulling on threads, and they keep going, and it's a really incredible thing to see.
So it's in the student's hand at the end of the day.
It is in the student's hand, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Okay.
I don't like to gloat, but I think that I've made a pretty solid course, right? And if people don't want to do it, that's up to ultimately their decision.
Perfect.
And in terms of Willow, again, this is putting you on the spot,
All
but
good.
if you what's something you would want in the minor? Like something you like, this is like your time to like, just give your
Oh
own
my
feedback.
gosh, yeah.
No,
Something I'd want in the minor.
or like something you would like, especially since as I recall you said like four NN3 or four, like it's still like in the works. So like
Yeah, for NO3, we're still working on it, and we're again, it's a very tricky thing to stick the landing on, but we're working on making it what we think is going to be a strong course.
Yeah. Ooh.
So as a student, just like what do you like want, like maybe you want from it, or like
One thing I really appreciated was we had a Canada-centered lecture. And certainly Dr. Whitlock's course incorporates a lot of Canadian nuclear history. So any kind of Canadian... I even took Dr. Piro's nuclear engineering course, and we learn out of an American textbook, and he had completely modified it so that it's Canadian focused, and we wouldn't even see the reactor types that they have in the United States unless you wanted to go further. And he had instead made all our questions Can-focused, for example. So I think, if possible, more Canadian nuclear content, but that's already incorporated.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. I mean, there has to be, not every lecture can be super, illuminating, asking the deep philosophical questions, because you often can't.
Yeah.
But maybe trying to turn more topics like nuclear licensing, and I say this as I'm about to start a co-op in May at the CNSC, that aren't super interesting to most people.
The broccoli topic.
Yeah. Turning them into broader discussions using case study examples like the NRU reactor. That maybe to boost engagement in the topics would be to take plain broccoli topics and apply them to
And try to-
real world scenarios.
Yeah.
To get people thinking.
It's an art, right? And now that the course has been built and run once, now I can focus on fine tuning. Like that was another piece of feedback I got in the course feedback forums, is like everyone agrees the topics are important, but they're like, it's not the most interesting thing.
Yeah. And
so,
maybe it would cement the learning more if they applied.
Yeah. And so I'm currently trying to figure out ways to make it more interesting. The course is scaling up to 200 enrollments for fall 2026.
Super.
Because we started with 150 and we hit that cap. So it's like, okay, well, the second year we're trying to promote it even more. We're trying to do even more work. Let's open it up to 200, see how it goes. There are methods of engagement that may scale well to 200 students. Like I've toyed with the idea of including a debate of some form, like a student debate into the lecture. But then it's like, how do you do that? There's a lot of logistics involved, right? Like if I have 8 students debating, like how do their grades relate or compare to other people? Or if I associate grades and now suddenly 60 people want to participate, like how do I whittle it down? So there are lots of logistical things to think about. But again, now that the course is built, now I have the privilege of being able to go back and try to fine tune it. It's like, how do I make this a little bit better? How do I go make this a little bit better? So I talked about it in like my assignment structure. Like because we're running a spring version of the course.
Oh, okay.
In a couple of months. Wow. Like I've actually gone back and I've rejigged all the assignments to fit this new sort of approach, which has been. I'll be able to test it well for the next fall iteration.
Like the accelerated format of a spring course, or just based on the feedback of the first?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. So I'm redoing the approach to the assignment questions entirely, and then the way they appear in the spring one will be slightly different because the course is so expedited, right? You basically have half the time to run the course.
Right.
The spring one will be online asynchronous because we want to be able to fit the schedule and the needs of students who may be on co-op or working full time to support themselves, right? Like here's a course you can come home, do a little bit in the evening at your own pace, and do it. So we're going to be doing that. It'll be in the spring term, so it'll be from May to mid-June. We've got 100 seats open. We'll see what that's like if the reception is good, and then we'll return for the fall version, which is like the standard in-person delivery night lecture type model. But all of this, like, it's a cycle, as like we talk about in 103. It's all about continuous improvement, right? Never being complacent. It's like there's always something to work on. Marcus is great, and every time something's happening in the world of nuclear, he'll shoot me a news article and be like, "Hey, you should talk about this."
Update.
So yeah, it's a process, and I think it's going well. Students seem to be happy, but that's not going to stop me from trying to
Keep on polishing.
keep on polishing it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of our interview today. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Of course.
I'll just say that this video will be on YouTube, and if you're interested in learning more about the minor of nuclear studies and society at McMaster, we'll link the website in the description of the video, so it's easily accessible to anyone who's curious. And also make sure to follow at Najeen_McMaster on Instagram and LinkedIn, where you can keep up with our club. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything to plug out or say last words?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're a student at McMaster University, do Nuclear Studies 103, and then do Nuclear Studies 203. And then by then, you might as well just finish the rest of the minor.
Might as well.
Yeah, and if you're a student at another school, you should come to McMaster, do Nuclear Studies 103, and then 203, and do the rest of the minor.
Perfect.
Super. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Of course.